Welcome to another Rough Cut web video. This video I want to talk about style tiles and how to sync to InVision. Here you can see two examples of style tiles I've finished. These should be similar to where you can head on your project as well. Notice how they are distinctly different one from the other. The differences come from the potential directions that we could take for this particular client. Now your situation might be a little bit different given that you are working with a fixed set of products and articles for your site, but keep in mind you can try to base off of different images to provide you different directions for colors, and you can also pursue different themes in terms of the look and feel. In this case, I went for a more conceptual visionary theme on this side and a more hands-on theme in this side. This company provides consulting services for medical facilities. So this one is kind of the safe bet, sticking very much with the kind of medical setting. And this one is the more visionary, forward-thinking set. Turns out the client went with this one. But as we look a little bit closer, we can talk through some of the components of the style tile. First off, you see a space where you can put in the name of the company. This is a place where I took the opportunity to experiment with some very basic ideas for the logos, but you do not have to do that in your case. You can just put in the name of your site here. Doesn't hurt to try to experiment a little bit though. Next we have the color swatches, and notice that we have 6 different swatches here, which may be more than you're used to using for planning colors for a project you're working on. Notice that each color is distinct in this case, and there's a reason for that. They are labeled very loosely as primary, secondary, body, hyperlink accent, and then you've got 2 other options. What I typically do is find 2 brand colors and a body copy font color, as well as 1 other hyperlink accent color. I like to stay in the blue family for hyperlinks since there is a strong convention for that, but that's definitely not a requirement. So generally I fit my 2 brand colors plus a body copy color that works with those, which is typically going to be a dark-ish color. Unless you're going to have a dark background overall, then you might of course want a light color. And then a hyperlink color that works with these but is definitely distinct enough that it can be noticed. So those 4 would be the minimum that you would actually use on the page, and you can see how I've tastefully used them down here. But the other 2 panels swatches allow you the opportunity to choose a couple of other colors that go with the others in case you need them. For example, we often will have colors that represent good actions like a success button or a save button in our application, and a danger color such as for highlighting invalid form fields or things like that. And so considering those colors, as well as you'll see over here on my other panel, I considered an in progress color, sort of an in-between, along that kind of stoplight theme of green, yellow, and red. I generally try to make sure that I have something like those 3 in each of my sets, just in case I need them. So in reality, I'm probably only going to use these 4 over here, and even so, probably only 1 of these brand colors primarily. But we definitely like to consider a full family of colors just in case we need them. And then you can also get client sign-off on that full family as well earlier on. Okay, so you can see how in the 2 sets I have different colors used across the full gamut. But what I've tried to do is actually kind of coordinate those with in this case, the feeling of stability and where they already are in the medical space. And on this hand, I went for a little bit more of a forward-thinking, bright future, planning your journey kind of theme. And so I used overall more brighter colors. As a hint, when you have a color panel selected, you can go over here to the right to the fill, and you can certainly copy and paste in a hex color if you've kind of done some color research elsewhere. But note that the HSB, as opposed to the RGB colors, the HSB colors here give you a little different way of handling it. The H control is going to adjust the hue, so that's going to change from red to yellow to green, etc. So you can see if I drag this around, we change just the hue. And you can of course just play with the numbers here if you want to just slightly nudge it along the hue spectrum. The S is saturation, and notice that that is going to change If I come here and if it lets me, come on, notice that this moves towards the more intense side versus towards the grayer side. So that is the saturation. So a low saturation means that it's going to be more in the gray edge, and a high saturation is going to be more in the full color edge. Last of all, the B for brightness is just adding black or subtracting black. So at 100% brightness, we are as light as we can be, depending on where the other two settings are. And as we go down, we darken. Okay, so keep in mind that for colors to feel like they work well together, you're going to want to have some pairing between those settings. In this case, over here, I have colors set up that continue to feel like they're a similar level of saturation. So none of these should be really outstandingly bright, even though some of the hues help make them more noticeable. They're all kind of semi-saturated, and they're also not really bright. Whereas over here, I have a high level of saturation. They should all be upwards in that scale. All right, so play around with those in order to get colors that work well together. Imagery you can just drop in from the images that you have researched in past examples and crop them as other videos have demonstrated. Last of all, for the fonts, what I usually do is start at fonts.google.com and search for fonts that I like. So let's say that I found this one, Rocket, that I wanted to use. What you do is add it to your collection, because what you need to do is download it and install it so that you can use it in your software. So once you have one or more fonts that you want to use, you click this down arrow and then the fonts are downloaded, and you can open Font Book on a Mac to drag and drop those fonts in to install them. Alright, so that's the step you want to do right now with fonts, to make sure that you download and install them for use. Later you'll learn how to come over here to the Customize tab, choose the weights that you actually want to use, and then use this import link in your CSS. But that's better explained in more detail in another video. Okay, so once we've got the fonts installed, we can now come in here to Sketch and begin to use them. Notice that I have just two different fonts. They're just at different sizes and weights. I've used one font for the sort of body copy sized text and another font for basically my headings. But of course I've used colors from the panels up above, and the weight of the font, which I can toggle over here, the size, set the color, other things like that. Some settings that you don't want to overlook because they make a big difference for where you go with your body copy is the line height. So pairing with the font size and the line height is leading, and you can see that as I adjust this up and down, it kind of increases or decreases the breathing room inside of my paragraphs. This is a good one to make sure you pay attention to because it can have a big impact on how your content feels to your users. The next one over here on the right is the paragraph spacing. This is basically like the space between the blocks. And if you take the time to play around with an appropriate setting here now, this will help you as you enter the CSS later. So whatever space you set here in your body copy and your leading, then kind of use that space as a way to establish vertical rhythm between your blocks. So the bottom line here is, don't just come in to the default template that you're provided and just put in the fonts. Make sure you consider the appropriate font size, spacing between blocks, and particularly leading inside of these smaller blocks. The more you do now, the more you'll have an intentional feel in your site, and the more you'll be able to set up with CSS later in a more accurate way. Of course, as you move these things up and down, try to keep the labels over on the left in line so that the style tile still reads nicely. Last of all, in our class, what we're going to want to do is put these up on InVision so that your professor can review them and add comments. So in order to do that, you're going to want to create an account with InVision. As you do that, make sure you follow the instructions on the course website because you need a code from your instructor in order to get the free educational access to this tool. But it's very easy to get started at this point. You just click this nice big plus icon, choose the Create New Prototype option, and then give it a name. I'm just going to name it broadly for the whole site, keep it on the desktop option, and click Get Started. Now I have a space that I can upload these images to, and if you've got the Craft plugin installed, which should be set up in the labs on campus, you come over here to the Craft plugin and you click this up arrow, you log in to your account. I've already logged in, and then you search for the project that you just created, select it, and click Sync. In just a few moments these will be prepared to upload. Then there's an upload progress bar that goes over here, and those should finish momentarily. If by chance there's any trouble with Craft, you can also export each of these panels as JPEGs. Coming down here to click Export Artboards, and then the Export option up here. Send those off as, JPEGs or PNGs, either one. But as PNGs in particular, you can just drag them right up into your project space here, no problem. But now you can see that the Craft plugin successfully uploaded my two screens. Now all we need to do is click this Add button. This Add button is this one up here. This is to add or remove people, and you want to make sure to go on here and put your professor's name, actually their email address, their Cedarville email address in here, or whichever email address your professor provides. That way your professor has full access to your project and will be able to come in and look at any of the screens that you've uploaded to provide comments. All right, enjoy working with style tiles.